And today we have another episode of Spectacular Singing because if it is spectacular, it really needs to have things that people love. And we are addressing today a piece in the zarzuela La Tabernera del Puerto, which of course is very well known by by far its most well-known romanza under the name of No Puede Ser, which Katia is going to be singing just now. Look at her
No puede
face.
ser, esa mujer es buena. Enough.
Well, believe it or not, there are people who think that No Puede Ser it's a very difficult piece to sing. Of course, we are not addressing No Puede Ser. And no puede ser in Spanish, no puede ser that people think that this is a very difficult piece. If I think I have already published in the podcast the episode for no puede ser. But fortunately for all of us, we are not addressing no puede ser. We are addressing another beautiful piece of music that is part of this zarzuela composed by Maestro Pablo Sorozabal. Which turns out to be, if you allow me the comparison, I know that there are people who listen to us and who are very strict, are going to ask for my head to be cut for this comment. But in a way, Maestro Pablo Sorozabal is for the zarzuela as a Donizetti, a Verdi, or a Puccini would be for the opera, a very important composer of the gender. So from Maestro Sorozabal, we have La Tabernera del Puerto, which is not very often on stage. It's very few times, and I think most of the times, if not all of them, only in Spain. I don't think it's ever been represented in Mexico or Argentina or Uruguay or anywhere else. We'll need to dig in the records of each of the countries to see if it has ever been performed, because for a zarzuela it is extremely long. It is in three piece in three acts. So for a zarzuela is long. It would be like Luisa Fernanda, like Doña Francisquita, like Marina, which are extremely long and that require not only the group of main singers, soprano, mezzo, tenor, and baritone, but also a much heavier orchestra and a chorus and a good number of times even dancers. So that makes a group of people over 100 or even around the 200 people working on stage. And as you know, the monies for all of that that are hardly ever present. For war, you can have thousands of millions, but for art there is barely money to do so. That's what explains why we haven't had the opportunity of watching the full La Tabernera del Puerto. Personally, I have seen it complete on YouTube. I believe a recording of the early 2000s. It is a fairly good recording, but it has the misfortune what we are about to start talking today. It has the misfortune that because of the no puede ser esa mujer es buena, because of that, nobody knows that there is a beautiful piece of music for the soprano in this zarzuela. And just as the other pieces that we have brought from the Musas Latinas, from Doña Francisquita, it's a very nice song, as you will be able to witness. And before we continue or we start with the details, wouldn't you like Katia to maybe sing something nicer than the No Puede Ser?
Porque la vi llorar.
Porque la vi querer, porque no sé vivir. You know. And the character singing today, well, couple of things that we need to mention. Remember that the zarzuela is in a way, if people like to call it the Spanish opera, which is really not fair because the zarzuela has many traditional or folklore uh, uh, I would say it is impregnated or it is born with things that are natural in speaking, in the names, in the dances, in the accents, in the style of the music. So just thinking that it is opera sung in Spanish, it's not fair. And I wanted to mention it because the character singing what Katia is singing today is called Marolla. But it is like, well, if you don't speak Spanish, but in Italian it is similar. Giuseppe is Pippo. In Spanish, Antonio is Toño. So Amarola would be a fair way of calling a woman who is usually known as Maria. So there are these variation in the names, but that are very natural to the regions where they are spoken. And that happens to be the case of the zarzuela. So that's the first thing that I wanted to mention. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that since it is a zarzuela, remember that they keep speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking, opposite to Italian opera or sometimes French or even German, where we have explained several times that there are repetitions, part A, then B, then repetition of A with the variation, etc. The zarzuela usually goes on and on and on and on and the
Mhm.
melody is built around all the conveyed message. This is a fairly short piece of music, but still it goes and goes and goes and goes. Instead of only three or four phrases and its variations, that it could be in other genders, it is going to be lots of text, and there are words that are very difficult to explain because the name is En un país de fábula. Um, how would you like to translate that en un país de fábula, Katia?
Well, I think that I can explain what does fabula mean, but to translate it's complicated because usually fabula it is a kind of tale based on animals as the main characters, but it has a lesson. It contains a lesson. It's not just a story. It's not like a tale because it has
A moral. It is usually called a moral.
yes, yes, yes. There is a learning in the story.
And so, en un país de fábula really doesn't mean in a country where only live animals. It doesn't really mean that. It's like an imaginary country, uh, like a fairy tale country. Sort of that could be the translation of en un país de fábula. So, en un país de fábula vivía un viejo artista que en una flauta mágica tenía su caudal. Again, I also wanted to mention that one of the things, being a native speaker of Spanish, I don't know for Kat, I think I have never asked you, but personally, when I like watching the zarzuelas, what I like is the Spanish that is used, because even if it is local to Spain or popular, it's usually very elegant. Truth is that we Mexicans don't speak with that level of elegance. We would have never been able to construct a phrase like en un país de fábula vivía un viejo artista que en una flauta
We
mágica.
don't say that in
We
Mexico.
don't say we don't even use those words. So never constructing that way. But personally, since I speak the language, I really like the flow of the words into the native Spanish because it sounds nice. We're going to get to the point where we say yes, 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 but since it's a spectacular singing, we want the thrills, we want the cadenzas, we want the gruppetti, we want the high notes. Who
Well,
cares about?
there are, but take it easy.
We are getting there, but just wanted to explain because there are many, many, many words that are in the middle of our road, and so why don't you share us, Katia, from your perspective, what is the state of mind, what is the mood of the singer when starting this En un país de fábula?
Well, for me, it was interesting to approach to this score because just you say that when we hear about la tabernera del Puerto, we remind to no puede ser. And it's a piece of music full of drama, full of tears, and it's all this passion contained. And when you hear En un país de fabula, it's completely the opposite side. Um, it's it's floating. Something interesting about being a coloratura is that you sing like a float, like a bird, or like a violin. Usually, I mean, there are dramas for coloratura sopranos too, but we usually sing about birds and flowers and the forest. We are princesses. So this piece for me, it has a little part of drama. There is a sad part. I won't spoil, but it starts like very sweet, like floating, like singing and dancing on the trees.
And also I don't know if it has happened to you or to the people who are watching or listening to us, but this is like you are daydreaming, like like your imagination is somewhere else. We usually do that. People may think to evade, or just because you say, I want to think of something else because things are not so good now. So why don't I think of something nicer that makes me smile, that makes me happy? So um, that's one of the nice things. Not everything is killing your husband, as in Lucia de Lammermoor. Not all the trills and ornaments are for doing that, but you can enjoy and you can high and you can have fun dreaming of a world that really doesn't exist, but that in your mind takes life. So that gives a sense that even though you are starting to tell the story, your voice is like you said, it's like dancing, like floating in the air. If you picture a forest, then you could be in the middle of the forest starting en un país de fábula because you're starting to open and the melody will carry you to tell the rest.
Yeah, that's right.
Which means again that you have to be in a I don't know if you need to do some yoga or some sort of relaxation before singing this, because if you're right to it to tense, the sound will even sound like harsh, like too tough, like not malleable. And you need for a piece like this all the opposite, that it flows, that it goes like this, that it is contagious in the happiness.
Yes, I think that in my case, to have the idea of singing on the air technically helps me to keep in mind that my intention also has to go on the air in this kind of score, in this kind of song, when I'm just telling a story. Because, for example, from Lacme, um, the bell song, you are telling a story, but there is a drama behind because you know that your father is expecting to catch the man that the forbidden guy that you are having a feeling for, and and you are working. Please, would you help me with carnada?
With what?
Carnada?
Bait.
Yeah, you are working as bait because you're singing just to show off this guy, this soldier. In this case, it's not. It's completely different because you are just telling a story that, like I said, I won't spoil. There is at that part in the story, but yes, you're just using the air and floating with the air and singing on the air and dancing on the air. That's it.
And
And it's
the story goes long as I was reading. En un país de fábula vivía un viejo artista que en una flauta mágica tenía su caudal tan pobre rey, tan rústico, que el mísero flautista dormía en copas de árboles por falta de un hogar. And that's what I was saying. The Spanish that is used in the zarzuela is so elegant. The verses and the poetry itself. Uh, it's not that Mexican or Latin Americans are not able to compose poetry, but this sounds so natural and elegant. Uh, of course, if you're not familiar with the rhythm of this and the intonation of the spoken Spanish, you may say, Ricardo, don't know what you're saying. I just hear words and words. But for people who speak Spanish, know that tan pobre rey, tan rústico, que el mísero flautista dormía en copas de árboles por falta de un hogar. Por falta de un hogar sounds so nice in spoken Spanish that again, and maybe we should mention that there are not so many changes in the height of the notes. Remember that whenever you have a number of notes and there is barely three or four intervals of the notes, it is pretty much the composer is telling you you're basically speaking.
Yeah.
Only legato and with other things that remind you that you're projecting the voice in singing, but you're basically speaking. When the duration of the notes is usually all at a quarter or a half or halves, and the let me say similar division of the sounds again
It
in the
has to
height.
walk. It
Yeah,
has to walk.
as we speak, sometimes we say yes, and you say yes, you're only enlarging the yes. Let me tell you, and then let me tell you that, and then the rhythm comes because that's a natural way of speaking. That happens here. Yes, the singer is singing, but it's more in this part like natural spoken Spanish without going too high, without going too low, as if it was Ulrica, without going with another volume or going pianissimi. If you see, it is like very straightforward reading, which, again, as we have explained in many programs, may put some singers at trouble.
It could be challenging, yes, if you don't have a very stable and well settled speaking voice. It will challenge you because you will be over singing it, and I think that's not the idea.
That's never the idea for these pieces of music, and I could say that if the singer, because any other singer would not only a soprano, maybe a mezzo would there, except for the highest notes, could like to do it, the mezzo voice would be way too powerful, too wide for this.
Yes,
So the type of singer that can sing this is very special. Needs to have a very good articulation of sounds. Because if you cannot understand the story, then you just skip, go for the
yes.
ornaments. But
Go ahead and go for no puede ser.
go for no puede ser esa mujer es buena, no puede ser una mujer malvada. Uh, which, by the way, now that we are making fun of all of that, and I know that many of our listeners are going to say, "But no puede ser is a great romance. Why are you making fun of it?" Uh, they don't even seem to be of the same composer. If you take a look at the style of, well, of course you're going to say yes, but the other is the drama, and because they are saying blah 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 blah. Yes, 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 we know. But if you take a look at the way each of those are composed, it looks like they are two different composers. It's like Maestro Sorozabal was super happy, maybe recently engaged or recently had a newborn baby when writing En un país de fábula. And then No Puede Ser, maybe they had just broken and he was, ah, and even the way the No Puede Ser is like too harsh in the composition. It's if you allow me expression, it's not even elegant because you can be mad and be elegant at the same time. It's opera, but no puede ser. It's not elegant either. Look at the way the sounds are thrown. No puede ser, esa mujer es buena. And en un país de fábula. You see, you are changing. It's like two different worlds. Weird or not so common that a composer can picture two very different melodies, very, very different melodies in the same composition in the cities. La tabernera del Puerto. So we were reading Tan pobre tan rústico que that he used to live in the trees because this poor man who played the flute was so poor that he needed to live on the top of the trees because he didn't have a home. So it is sad. So in this imaginary world, this poor man is living on the top of the trees because he cannot afford to have a house. But there is something nice. Y los pájaros de la selva lo venían a despertar. Which is a very nice. Wait, I'm not sure about many of all of you who are listening to us, but some of us are fortunate to have trees very close, and so it is very nice to wake up and listen to the birds. That's the story that we are being told. This poor man was poor, lived on the top of the trees, but the birds would come to him to wake him up. That is nice. Y los pájaros de la selva, repetition, lo venían a despertar. Y el viejo flautista tocaba a su vez diciendo las aves con altivez. And there's where the soprano starts working on her ornaments. And let me go back to your comment you just made that your tesitura is usually you can play a flute or or some other instrument if needed. And yes, there are several of these pieces where the soprano and the instrument, many times the flute, if not, it's like echoing. You can easily get it in Lucia di Lammermoor in the scene of where she has already killed her husband. Uh, Among all those thousand ornaments, there is a part where the flute is doing an ornament and the soprano is doing the same. That is so common in the coloratura repertoire. So maybe the sopranos like Katia really don't need a pianist but need a flautist. Because many times you are and then the flute doing it that's pretty much what the echoing sounds like. Have you had the chance of singing with a flautist yourself?
No, not now, not yet.
That could be nice that we can find uh, a musician who plays the flute and build a program where you could have one or two of those pieces with the echoing of the flute. That could be nice.
Yes,
Maybe,
yes, it
maybe
was.
we should consider it for a coming
Hmm?
concert. That could be lovable. Of course, you are the only one who can work in echoing a flute because all the others it's barely not going to work.
No, not
No,
you.
nobody wants to hear that. So we adhere to the plan and we look for that. So we have wrapped up the text has led us to this sadness of being so poor, but you live in the top of the trees. But you have the birds that come to wake you up to the old man, and so he speaks to the birds with his own flute. That's why I mentioned the flute, because the following sounds are going to be what the dialogue between the flute or the soprano with the birds. What would you like to share us for this first interchange of sounds? Let's call it
Yeah,
interchange
sure.
of sounds. And everybody knows that you're going to say it's super easy. You just have to.
Because it is! You just come in your mouth!
And you have a fermata calderon here, which means okay, if you want to hold on for your first note for the time you want, just take a little longer if you wish. before jumping to the following ornaments because you have four groups of four. So if you need it, take your time before jumping into them. But provided that I am not a soprano coloratura, to the surprise
Really?
of everybody, you say you're not. I thought you were.
Oh my God! Have you cheated me all this time?
uh, it's easy because of course you get familiar with how you prepare for your own tessitura, and so you know that your fellow tenors before their high note they usually take lots of air, prepare, and do something funny or horrible just before the note. So I know how that usually goes. But for a soprano coloratura, what do you say? I don't care about the format. Or you say, yes, I'm going to spend more time because I want to people listen to the initial sound. Or you say, no, I'm going to rush because I want to. What comes to your mind from the perspective of a coloratura?
Well, I think that I have at least two choices because if I stay in the fermata for a long time, I will have to take a breath for sure between the F and the rest of the figure, which can have an intention. And it can work like to create expectation, or you can make a single phrase, and it depends on you. I prefer to stay in the fermata, but not for so long to cut and then the cadenza, because for me it's like a preparation. Listen, what's coming next. I like that effect, but it's just for my taste.
And also, you mentioned the cadenza. If you have studied music, if you're a musician already, or you're in the process of becoming a musician, you know that there are cadenzas that are basically do what you want. I mean, I wrote those notes, but sing anything else if you feel like it. And there are cadenzas that are expected to be followed by the singer, but that anyway, many singers say, "Okay, I know you wrote it, but anyway, I'm going to do whatever I want." So,
Yeah, that's
so there is mm, this thing of taste that you mentioned, and of course, if you ask any singer will tell you, "I did the best." Because that's more effective, that's more impressive. And going to making fun of the no puede ser, porque no sé, and baby, and this exaggeration of baby, and dragging the R, baby, like that with that horrible, because they say, oh, people are impressed of my sound. And from my
yeah,
perspective,
it's like a contest to see who can sing it louder or more violent.
yeah, like I know that when you are desperate, your sound, your voice needs to carry the sound of desperation. You don't need to yell, "Porque no sé vivir."
Then
If your sound is "vivir," if you just wrap it like that, maybe it could be more effective. But people say if it is long and it is high, it is more effective, and it does not always work that way. More going back because we are using the exaggeration of No Puede Ser by the same composer, but going back to this piece, being so delicate and telling you the story of a man having a dialogue with the birds who wake him up. Personally, I think that if you're just opening and you say, uh, fairly good cadenza, but forget it, I'm going to do something else. uh, and um, Many people think that the more the ornaments, the nicer it sounds. Personally, I
no,
think that the most adhere they are to the style of the music, and as long as the singer does it well, I think we're good. But if you're changing the cadenza or the grupetti or anything just because you cannot sing it, that's where we should ask ourselves what the man or the girl is doing.
Yes, I have a very silly example, but I think that probably in the most of the countries and cities we are being heard and seen, we all know pizza. So imagine a pizza, an Italian food, and you decide to put, for example, here in Mexico, there are pizzas, and I respect that, but suddenly you find a pizza with beans or shrimps or weird things that they don't really match with the idea of the pizza. Well, the same happens here in music. Please don't.
Yeah, because, and you know that, if you're a coloratura and you say, ah, I am so comfortable between the C and the, let's say, E, yeah, the E sharp, let's say, I am so comfortable among those notes that I am going to sing everything there. Remember, we have mentioned people are going to get tired. If you start throwing all those notes from the first ornaments you have, by the second time that is coming, that you want to put them for the people, people will not appreciate it because you already threw everything. And Katya also gave the advice in previous programs that you have to keep something, the surprise factor by the end or the middle or somewhere that people say, wow, what a beautiful sound. You say, Ani, Ani, she's going to sing another E. Instead of having that emotion of the three E's of an E, if you throw three E's to your singing, nobody's, and people are going to say, yeah, but the first one was nicer. And the second one, she fell in trouble. Oh no, by the third one, it was a mess. It really didn't sound well. So you're spoiling yourself. You're singing against yourself for doing that so often. So that's another reason, from my perspective, why you shouldn't be putting too much in your singing, and especially these ones where there are many ornaments that I would, unless Katia thinks differently, I think that it's better to execute them nicely and keep the surprise for a given time than throwing and throwing and throwing. And there is a thrill, and there it is. I was just thinking that this time I'm going to give the name. Beverly Seals likes to do that. Beverly Seal says, what is this? It is an A? Oh no, I'm going to add a gruppetti instead of the A. And so you listen to hers and this say, Donizetti didn't compose like that. This isn't Donizetti. This isn't even Rossini. I don't even know what Beverly Seals is singing. Just notes and notes and notes. Because, as I was sharing with Katya earlier, a few months earlier, I think that what Katya explained at the beginning today, Beverly had lots of trouble in expressing in continuous singing the stability of her voice. She said, people are going to notice that if I sing continuously more legato, are going to see my weak parts. So what do? I hide them, and I hide them behind an ornament. Because instead of listening to a questionable A, they listen to a thrill and they say, oh, wow, a super singer. She sang a thrill. No, she was unable to sustain a beautiful A for what happened before and what was going to happen after. And that is very, very common. And Katia knows it better than me. That is very common for the coloratura sopranos. They many
Oh yeah.
times hide behind the ornaments to not expose themselves in the lacks of their singing.
Yeah, there are some sopranos that are just concentrated in the high notes. If I can sing as high as no one else, nobody will pay attention to that things that I haven't solved yet or that I will never solve. So nobody cares if I'm not singing very well the rest of the piece, but I will get a super high note and a large note and in triple F, and that will be enough. Well, suppose that you go to a restaurant and the rest of the food is sorry, but it's crap, and the dessert is excellent. Well, yes, but what about the rest? Well, same here.
And that's going to bring us back to the comment we have also made earlier that if you yourself are a singer or undergoing your singing classes and would like to have some coaching or some singing lessons with Katia, you can always approach the Ko-fi link. It's on our Ko-fi profile. You can look for that in the shop and appoint for a lesson or as many lessons as you feel like it with Katia so that you can start working on that. Because also, for other reasons that I am not going to explain now, but recently I was sharing with Katia that many young singers don't realize. And by young, I don't mean that they are in their 20s or that they are teenagers. By young, I mean if you're starting your career in the 30s and you barely have a year, 2 years singing, you're still young in the development of your voice. That's what I mean by young. So if you're still in the early stages of the development of your voice, if you don't learn to do things well at the beginning, it's impossible that you learn them later. We were talking about if you're unable to control your voice for a filato, if you don't do it in the early stages, don't think that in 10 years you will be able to manage your voice to work on your filaturas. It's not going to happen like that. If you have problems working on your dynamics, going from the triple P to a triple F because your sound your voice like goes like everywhere because you lose the support and you are unable to control it. Time is not going to heal it. Time is
It will
only
make it worse.
it will make it worse. It will make it worse. So before that happens, and if you feel like you're struggling, of course, the thing in singing is that you don't say, I went to Katia's lesson and today I corrected the pianissimi, the next week the fortissimi, and then the legaturas in one lesson. Of course, it's not going to happen. Remember that this is a long, long career, but of course you need. If I also wanted to mention, and maybe we should have another special episode, Katia, on that because there's been coming more comments on the evidence that, and you know it yourself because you have your own students who come from other teachers, that you if you're taking lessons already and you feel that something is not working, you really need to start looking for a new singing teacher because that is only going to ruin your voice. And by the time you feel like, oh, I am going to move to another teacher and he evaluates your voice and he notices that there are already harmed areas of your voice, that maybe would be too late. Remember that the voice is like a one in your lifetime. If you spoil it, of course you can say, oh, but I have read that singers like this and this and this go to therapies and recover. Yes, yes, yes. But if you're planning to go to a phonologist or something, someone to correct medically your voice when you're in your 30s, you are done. There is no future for your voice. So really, 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 if you can do it now, if the singing teacher you are with, if you end your lesson and you can't even, not even sing, and you can't even speak, you are in the wrong place. A voice that is heard after a lesson is certainly doing something wrong. Run away as fast as you can, find
And don't turn back.
turn your head back. Well, just pay for that final lesson and please don't come back. And we're laughing at it, but it is true. We have also talked. I have.
I know cases and it's dramatic. So,
It's very sad when we know a singer and you say, "Hey, he's 26, 27, and his sound is right, it's stable. He has these areas to correct." 3 years later, he can't even sing Nemorino.
mhm.
No support in the voice, all these all is now wrong. So keep that in mind. I wanted to mention that because we have said many times that things are easy and the gruppetti and the things, but we need to mention again about the struggles of people who are undergoing these singing classes. Okay, let's move on. There is more text here now in double P. Why not? Yo también soy un pájaro viejo lleno de trinos, el aire vernal. Yo también he volado en la vida sin rumbo y sin nido, donde emparejar. Vosotros cantáis en hechas de amor, yo canto amarguras de mi corazón. So now, the man has told us that of course, he can also do some of the singing not as happy as the birds because there is a sad story in themselves. And because of that sadness, if you see here now, the ornaments are not that short, nor that fluid because it has to be sung, if not sadly, at least with a tone that is not the full happiness that it's earlier. But there is a change. Notice the number of notes in each of the bars here, 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 and something happens now. You see the points in the tops of the notes, and you see how we have two groups now here when we used to have just one before. The mood of the melody evolved without any other explanation by the singer and by the composer, sorry, and the singer needs to understand that because otherwise, if you sing it too slow, all continuously, something is not going to make to make sense. And there is also this option, this. That's why I was going to say optional notes, but they are not optional notes. There are these I would say justification just because you need to add a sound like and you know that's the favorite letter of the sopranos, the So, how
We
would
will
you
play someone.
how would you advise Katia for singers who start with this? How to build the momentum as you are evolving because now the melody is itself evolving without any other change in the words. Now the words are not there to help you because many times the words support the message and there are not words here. How do you suggest that they evolve along these bars?
Well, in this part of the melody, you are not telling the story. You are the old man. So when we are talking with our dogs, because now that we have this develop of the relationship with our not pets but our furry partners, we have understand that when we talk with our dogs or cats or our pals, we feel free to speak about our feelings because we are not being judged. And this is the case of the old man. He is opening his heart. He's talking, like we said in Spanish or in Mexico, con el corazón en la mano. He's taking his heart out of the chest and talking about his feelings with freedom. So, because he's not being judged by the birds, I think that idea would help you to. A little playful. You are just expressing your heart, expressing yourself, just live that freedom of your feelings because you are in the forest where nobody else hears. So you have to feel that freedom, that peace, that calm.
And after that calm that you explained us, indeed the sense of being able to express ourselves, and it has to happen in the middle of the forest where only other animals are listening to us. The story continues when they say, pero una noche trágica durmióse el triste abuelo sobre el pomposo vértice de un árbol secular, y entre un fragor horrísono cayó una luz del cielo, y el miserable músico durmió la eternidad. Which basically is telling us how he actually dies. Which is, of
It's
course,
horrible.
not nice. It's not nice to tell. It's not nice to read.
No.
But that's what the story is telling us, how this old artist died. Ni los pájaros de la selva consiguieronle despertar, ni los pájaros de la selva consiguieronle despertar. Las aves cantaron y el viento lloró, y el viento y las aves copiaban su voz. And we have again a similar construction to what Katia showed us earlier. So if you notice this, this can be even said that it is contradictory, because in un país de fábula, you know that this place doesn't really exist, and you tell this old man who lived, who was happy to live by the birds, only to learn later that he died horribly as described in the story. And so that leaves a sensation when you read, that leaves a sensation of, oh my god, there is something not good happening here. Um, but I think that it is important that it is conveyed in the voice without being Manon Lescaut. It is not going to be sola perduta abbandonata and he died and he died. So you have to be careful on how you pass that sense of sadness, of tragic sound of the story without exceeding the style of the song. What did you suggest for this part, Katia?
Well, it is sad, of course. It has to create a contrast between the first part and well, but it's also not just a contrast. It is a link between the first part and the ending, that it's happy again, because we listen the nature, the birds, the air sounding like the float of this old guy. So I think that it's spoken, and it has to sound, yeah, melancholic, but pero una noche trágica durmióse el triste abuelo. But it's not Visidarte, or no. It's in the same spoken idea. If you practice to read your text, to speak the text, your lyrics, it will make more sense when you sing it.
And it is important that if you're not a native speaker of Spanish, or if you don't speak Spanish at all, that you study the words, not only because of what I was saying earlier, it has a natural rhythm of spoken Spanish and it sounds very well, but because same, I understand French and Italians when they say, I just heard a beautiful mezzo voice, but the Italian was so poor that I detested her aria. Or the French who are more picky with the sounds of their language, and they say, okay, I heard Carmen, but really it sounded like Manon Lescaut, so really didn't like it. Same happens to me when I listen to Spanish, because there are other singers that I'm not going to give names because they are very recent, but she's in particular American, that has gone for singing zarzuela. The voice is good, but the sounds and the understanding of the style are completely out of place. So whatever, de España vengo, de España vengo, and so
Bingo.
yeah, it sounds horrible because it's not España vengo, it's de España vengo, de España vengo. I don't remember how it goes in the between, but that's the idea. De España vengo, de España soy, and de España soy, and the accent falls wrong, and the e doesn't sound like, and it's a mess. So if you're going to uh, to work you as a light, better as a coloratura soprano, you're going to work on a piece like this in Spanish. Make sure, and because of the text it carries, make sure you understand what you're saying. Because if not, you're going to lose the opportunity and you're going to spoil a very beautiful piece of music as the one we have visited today, only because of the lack of understanding of the language. And that is not fair. Katia
It's
has
not.
explained many times as a professional, even if you only have one person in the auditorium, you have to always do your best. So if you say, "Oh,
Yes.
this is a small place, I'm not going to prepare myself," well, no, man. Even if
No,
you only
no.
have one, you have to prepare as if they were 1,000. So
Yeah.
go study your language. Make sure what you're singing. Make sure you pass that emotion of the first part in contrast with the second, and the beautiful sounds of the melody are going to be a consequence of what you did well. I know that people say, "I don't know what she sang, I don't know what she said, but the ornaments were nice."
Usually nobody understands the lyrics of soprano.
Yeah, but this provided the message that this carries. It's worth it's really worth to understand
Yeah.
what is being sung. If you ask me about the bell song in the park where there are only ornaments, I mean Dove bell Indiana Brona, Uvala Jonandu. Well, the message is at the beginning, but once you reach the ornaments,
And the
really,
rest is, and that's
yeah, that's pretty much done. Now let's talk a little as we're getting close to the end. Let's go for the ending because it happens what you mentioned earlier, you're not going to have the super opportunity to provide a super high note at the end, basically because it's not written. You are not given a super high note at the end. Remember that for Katia, anything that is below a high C, it's a low note. So
it's a deep note, yes.
it's a deep note. So we have ornaments, but all of them are very deep. If you see the range, there is they are not so low, but they are not so high. So it's very particular the way it is wrapping up. What do you think?
Well, I think that it doesn't need so many pyrotechnics and this charge of virtuosism because the story it's beautiful in itself and it has the dose exactly where you sing as the float, where you sing as the birds, and you end in a very sweet and delicate and fancy way. So for me, it is like a perfect song.
And what about the final note? Would you adhere to your final note or would you do something else?
No, no, no. I would finish with this B flat. I can sing almost an octave higher, but there's no need. If somebody follows me, will know that I can sing the Queen of the Night, and if wants to hear me singing something really, really high, will hear my version of the Queen of the Night or like me, but not here. There's no need. I can do it, and the people knows. That's enough.
And so for singers or people who think that Beverly Seals was a great singer only because she added high notes and added ornaments, not the case.
No.
Adhere to the score. It was nice. It was fair. You sounded well. You made it work, and people are happy. Any final message, Katia, that you would like to pass to the people?
Yes, if you want to add several notes and ornaments, well, sing Baroque. Because in that kind of music, you are free to add the ornaments in your expose, as I did, for example, in Cleopatra. It's music written for the singer to expose their skills, not here.
Absolutely. And so, with that being said, I want to thank everybody for having watched, listened this episode of Spectacular Singing. Fortunately, it was not the No Puede Ser, and we'll meet in this same season in a month. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody.
Thank you. Bye.